Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 168. And today we're going to be covering a song. It's not a sports type of tune, even though we're taping this right after the Super Bowl. I hope your favorite team won or lost. Um, but we're going to be talking about the third track on Presto, The Pass. And we'll do a short little introduction about the tune. And also in introductions, I want to welcome Egor. He's a first-time panelist. So welcome him, and it's great to have you here. And
Thank you.
he's on a different continent, and it's quite early where he is. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. We're going to talk about the beginning, intro, opening instrumentation. Do you want to say a few words about that, Egor?
Yeah, so very short story. I heard Rush when I was 12, and I loved Deep Purple, and that's it, nothing else. So I heard Rush in Rio. That was my introduction to the band. And when I heard the bass, I was thinking like, hey, that sounds familiar. So you know the song "Child in Time," right?
Hmm?
By Deep Purple. Here is the thing. I thought that it uses like the same concept, like no low notes and then some high stuff. Like okay, for example, the Child in Time it goes like and then right, and then it goes down, and then again some high stuff. But with Rush, it's not only uses the same concept, it actually uses almost the same notes, like G G A, G G A sharp, and then it goes down to the F F G. It just and then some high stuff, some bright stuff, and then yet again, and some bright stuff, and then so it goes lower and then high stuff again. So I thought that it's pretty cool. I don't know if you know anything about uh, Rush taking inspiration from Deep Purple as much as from Led Zeppelin, and in particular with this like mellow kind of mellow Child in Time tune. Have you heard about? Have you heard anything about it? Maybe someone read something about it.
Yeah, I'd be curious to find out. I mean, I'm sure Alex has some inspiration from Richie, but I
Yeah,
don't know
Mhm.
how well
I
defined
don't.
it is.
I've never really heard him mention anything about Deep Purple. I mean, but yeah, you got to assume that there's some bit of interest there.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Hard to imagine not. But I mean, at this point, I would think of just more that Getty was exploring, continuing to work with the bass chords, because obviously picking up off of Hold Your Fire as far as why am I drawing a blank? Paul, help me out here. Turn the page, thanks.
Yes, you're welcome.
So the idea is that, I mean, that was a little more upbeat, and basically at this point, just kind of playing it laid back.
Mhm.
Because how often do we think of Getty with a laid back bass line? Well, here's a perfect example.
Mhm.
And in that case, you figure as a trio, it's basically, well, Getty's playing it laid back with those, well, simply just power chords, but still bass with
Yeah.
power chords. So Lifeson gets to have the sustained B flat and E flat sus2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point because it really sets the stage for um, just the idea of this lonely type of sound, and it starts to build. And actually, it's kind of cool that I think this is the first time we actually had live music on a roundtable. So that's very cool. I thank you for that, Egor. But I think that what you mentioned, Egor, is an important thing because it really kind of starts to create a visual, very much like Child in Time.
Yeah,
That
that's
was a
it.
different
That's another
subject.
similarity between the two songs. They kind of like build, 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 and then then it goes kind of quieter, and then yet again. So it's kind of, but the yeah,
I'm sure the inspiration is since they're contemporaries, it definitely
Mm.
transferred over in some vicarious manner.
yeah.
But very good introduction. I definitely, I think that was awesome. And I think we can even jump into at this stage, leading into setting the stage, is getting into the first verse. So I'll read the verse, and then Paul, if you want to say a few words after. First verse: proud swagger out of the schoolyard, waiting for the world's applause. Rebel without a conscience, martyr without a cause. Static on your frequency, electrical storm in your veins, raging at unreachable glory, straining at invisible chains. So,
Yeah, all three members of the band have said this is one of their favorites from the album. They've said it multiple times live. Getty introduces it that way almost every time. Rio comes to mind, but as far as setting up, this was my first album, like I said on Show Don't Tell, my first new Rush album when I started getting into them. So between the Pass and to a slightly lesser degree Warpaint, these were my subdivisions. So when you open like that, you automatically have the theme of isolation, of loneliness, of false fronts, or putting the proud swagger out of the schoolyard, trying to put up a front. And I've said before, I still think, even though the guys have said that they tried to ease up a little bit on theme as far as album by album goes when they got to Presto, example being they went from Time to Instinct on Hold Your Fire. Every song on Presto, and in this case, The Pass, if you look at it through the eyes of perception being the theme of the entire album, right off the bat, I'm putting out there that, proud swagger out of the schoolyard, waiting for the world's applause. But by the time you get to the second stanza there, static on your frequency, electrical storm in your veins. In other words, it's not as sure, it's not a swagger there. And actually, with static on your frequency and electrical storm, I think Chain Lightning, so great segue going from Chain Lightning into The Pass. But you have this unsurety, and they set the stage for the future lyrics, which we'll get to in a second, of, okay, I'm putting out there, or the song's protagonist, or however you view it, is putting out there an image that isn't accurate. Insecurity hidden by this proud swagger. And as the isolation grows, as we'll get down the lyrics, strong start, and you're going to see what's underneath. So that's why I think perception sticks with this one as well. So.
Yeah, very, very good point. Absolutely. And leading into that, I'll read you the next part, and Evan will talk about this next section. And now you're trembling on a rocky ledge, staring down into a heartless sea. Can't face life on a razor's edge. Nothing's what you thought it would be. So Evan, what say you about this?
Right. So this is a pretty dark one, at least to me. The Pass is arguably Rush's darkest and most emotional song. To me, this verse it's about intrusive thoughts. Our character here, or however you want to view it, is kind of disillusioned or just not really happy, I guess, with the state of the world, and is having those thoughts of wanting to commit suicide. And one thing I do really want to mention about this verse is the pre-chorus only comes up twice in this song. And the first time it comes up, the lyrics are "can't face life on a razor's edge." So that implies that the character is having just doubts about the world. But the second time it comes up is done with life on a razor's edge. So to me, that implies our character has given up and is actually going to go through with it, which is just tragic. I apologize, I'm not very insightful. That's the bulk of what I have to say about this verse.
I think you're right on the money. I mean, it's really something where there's a plan in place, like you mentioned, Paul. There's something that's building up, and we're not really sure what it is yet. So it's really this story that Neil spent a lot of time researching in terms of the process that someone goes through to even the stories. He did a lot of research on the stories of what leads teens to commit suicide, and so the anti-suicide sentiment that he was trying to put forward in the story of this person, and it could be an actual person or not. I think the fact that he repeats this a little bit different each time, again, there's no accident in any of that. And I think it's really, we're not quite at the complete plot. The plot is thickening though. But I think it's great that you mentioned that it's done twice, but it's done the second time, and there's a reason for that. There's always a reason why Neil does it. So I guess we can press on to the next bit, the chorus, which happens twice, and I think it's even that's slightly different each time it comes back. So let me read you the chorus, and we'll get some thoughts on the chorus. All of us get lost in the darkness. Dreamers learn to steer by the stars. All of us do time in the gutter. Dreamers turn to look at the cars. Turn around and turn around and turn around. Turn around and walk the razor's edge. Don't turn your back and slam the door on me. So, any thoughts on this section? This is definitely, I think the intensity is revved up here at this point.
Well, at this point, you certainly have someone who's answering or something that's answering the individual, the protagonist's strife. Because at that point, there was one little bit of information that said that Neil was certainly answering himself, what seemed like a romanticization. I really can't speak tonight. You know what I'm saying? Thank you. Of teenage suicide, and it was interesting. I wound up taking a quick look before we got on of a few movies around that time, like Heathers, Beetlejuice, non-Winona Ryder movies like Better Off Dead or Nightmare on Elm Street, where they did depict teenagers looking to end their life. And I don't feel like it was romanticized, I could say at that time, but I still don't think it was romanticized then. But at the same time, too, it is the sort of thing that if someone really is at that point of true consideration, it does take another element to step in and say, hey, all of us get lost in the darkness. All of us do time in the gutter. Why don't you turn around from that thought? So, I mean, it's kind of Neil just presenting it up there as we're building to this tragedy, but maybe we can turn back.
You perceive things a certain way, change your perception, turn it around.
I always like sorry, go ahead.
No, you go for it. I've already been talking.
I've always liked the repetition of the words "turn around" in the chorus, because it's, when you're struggling with something or you're trying to take the steps to alter your perspective or turn your life around, it doesn't always work out the first time. So sometimes you need to try a couple times. So turn around and turn around and turn around. No matter how many times you try, it's important to keep trying until you get it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, third time's the charm, as they say, right?
Right. Yeah.
But also the idea of having those options.
What has Dr. Donna Helper taught us as far as Neil repeating lyrics?
Mm-hmm.
They're very important if he's repeating himself.
That's right. Yes, and moving onward to the next bit, and Egor will take this once I read it. It's not as if this barricade blocks the only road. It's not as if you're all alone in wanting to explode. Someone set a bad example, made surrender seem all right. The act of a noble warrior who lost the will to fight. So, Egor, what do you say about this?
Yeah, well, I really like this verse because English is not my first language, as I said before. So I really like those type of lyrics that are just straight to the point. So it's not some stuff like Around the World by Daft Punk, for example, and it's not something that Chris Cornell does, because I don't understand anything, like some stuff, but mostly it's just too many words, too many and so Losing It is my favorite lyrics by Rush, but this one comes close. So, but yet I'm not sure about the barricade and the road, so if anyone wants to talk about it after me, that would be great. It's not if you're all alone and wanting to explode. Well, obviously it's about how everyone has those thoughts about, well, maybe not everyone, but I'm pretty sure to some degree we all have at some point. Like, life is too long, so we all have our darkest moments that we just feel like, I can't take it anymore. Someone said a bad example made surrender seem all right. So I will try to be as short as possible about this one. I had a friend who committed something, because YouTube apparently doesn't like this word, 2 years ago, and one more friend of mine had unsuccessful attempt very recently. So the example and the surrender, I'm not saying that it made it seem all right, but I guess Neil is trying to talk from another person's perspective. Like the word irony is like too kind of, well, bad to use in this. I would say that it's just another perspective. So it's like, first day you're in shock, you're in disbelief, the brain is trying to make you go on with your life, thinking about your bills, your work, your hobby, or something. The next few days, that's when, the bad thing starts. You're thinking that you had to call that person, that it's your fault, that you are at least a part of the reason why that happened. But then you're trying to rationalize it, and I'm not saying that it's all right, but, it does make surrender seem all right when you're trying to connect the dots, to connect the pieces of the puzzle together, and you're thinking like, well, he had his reasons. And of course you're thinking like, I should have called him or something, even if you don't see each other that much. But well, it might surrender seem all right, and the scariest part is when it becomes an example for you. So you're starting to think maybe it's okay for you to do it, but then you're trying to think that now you miss that person. Like people say that your life is okay. You're ended your life, but the people that surround you, they suffer the most after. So this example is really bad. So that's all that I. Oh yeah, okay. The act of a noble warrior who lost the will to fight. The noble warrior, maybe that's an irony, because well, and who lost the will to fight. Well, sometimes you have a but like week or month or even a year, and getting through each day is really a fight. It's like some sort of achievement when you're getting through your day and like, okay, tomorrow we will try again. And you're trying to see something good in each day. And the problem is that maybe you see something good, but you can't feel it. So you see your friends, you're going to the museum, you're going to, outside the town, taking a drive, and you see stuff like pretty views, or you're having having a good time, but you can't feel it. So that's the fight, I think. Well, at least, for some people I know, and for me, it's like the veil is blocking. It's between your eyes and what you see. You just can't. And the worst part is that you know that you could, like some time ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you're like, hell, it was great. Even like in the pandemic times, now people are apparently nostalgic about it because it had some vibe to it. But well, and some time later, it's just dull, and you're trying to fight to see like turn around, and try again, and trying to find something. So that's it.
Permanent
That's all I
solution
think
to a temporary problem.
Yeah.
It's funny because that perspective goes both directions. It's not just on the one person that's going through it. It's like we have our own takeaways from these events that occur, and how do we, like you mentioned, like, or we have our hobbies, our work, how do we go through and do those things with this event that's happened, how do we deal with it? So we have our own perceptions and perspectives to address and go through. So now we move on to the next bit, which is the repeat of the early bit. And now you're trembling on a rocky ledge, staring down into a heartless sea, done with life on a razor's edge. Nothing's what you thought it would be. So I guess this person is at a point where it's like, well, mind's made up, we're going through with this, and feeling out of options, and that's the perspective that person may have to do what they want to do, and just not feeling that there's no way to turn around at this point. We're going through with this. Evan, do you want to speak again about this, or you're pretty good with?
No, I think I've said all I
Okay.
want to say about it.
All right, no worries. And then we continue on to the next bit. All of us get lost in the darkness. Dreamers learn to steer by the stars. All of us do time in the gutter. Dreamers turn to look at the cars. Turn around and turn around and turn around. Turn around and walk the razor's edge. Dude, don't turn your back and slam the door on me. So we're pretty much nothing's changed in that bit of it. But now we get this relief with the instrumental section. Our guitar solo comes in. So there's a bit of a, I guess, perception, introspection bit in this instrumental. So does anybody want to talk about this part in particular?
Well, they got 16 measures of a solo. Lifeson's laying into an awful lot of sustained notes, a lot of breathing room. It's only in the last two measures where he really brings in the excessive number of notes. Not that I'm saying they're excessive; it's the right number of notes. But okay, but at the same time too, it's just eighth notes. I mean, the song's at like 112, 116. It's not. It's moderate. But I'm trying to. Sorry, what was that?
The intensity.
Yeah. Building intensity towards the end of the solo. I think it was in the first documentary where was it Kirk Hammett who made the comment about the beginning of the Livia Strangiato solo being the perfect setup of mood, and this is kind of I'm not going to say an actual repeat of it, but I mean, it's in his toolkit. So the idea of, the chord slides out of the chorus into the solo section, and then the notes are sustained.
Yeah,
That's
and
all they're
there's
not.
also that ascending climb that goes on with
Hmm.
the notes. There's like this up and up movement. It's almost like I guess a reflective musical part of like, okay, this person is ascending to wherever,
Mm, yeah.
wherever it is you go. So that's the impression I get from this. There's a that figurative lift musically. It's kind of painting a picture, and against with Alex, it's always the right part. He always puts in the right stuff
Yep.
and drives me crazy, but I love it.
Speaking
And
along that really
yes,
quick, Rob, is I
absolutely.
was thinking is Rupert Hine as far as producing. He was brought in a little bit later in the writing process than previous producers had been, and what he was shooting for, among other things, with them was range. He worked with Getty specifically as far as lowering even to a full octave his vocal range on
Mm,
certain songs. I think The Pass is a great example of that. But what reminded me, as our Alex was talking about Alex's solo, was that also had a lot of breathing room, and it allowed for that intensity to build in the way that he crafted it. Plus, Rupert also had them reduce the number of keyboards down to, I
mm.
believe it was, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, if you've got four or three or four, let's bring it down to one, have Alex fill these parts. And this song is complete because of it, as far as I'm concerned, because you've got Getty's bass chords like we talked about. Neil does, not that he does anyway, but he never wastes a measure in this. There's always something going on with the three of them. And the solo, I think that's what helps the solo build so well. I could always hear Alex talking about guitar parts. That's why the minute he started talking about the solo, I'm like, I'm being quiet. I want to hear this, because the music bed or the score that's been created for it, and I'm definitely borrowing from previous roundtables as far as that imagery goes. That's another huge strength of this song,
Hmm.
is that now we've got the full picture painted, the intensity, which leads us into the next lines.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the word craft because that's something that they really want to make sure they did for the record and for the song because they always mention that this is one of their better crafted songs. So I think that's an opportune word right there. Using the idea. Even Neil is I put this effort into lyrics because I want people to get something from them. That's why I put them there. So I spend time crafting, what I do. And with drum parts, that's the whole thing with these guys. They're always what can be the better version of this band and how can we do it? And I think just, that's a whole other roundtable, I think, to even talk about this. So I guess moving on to the next part, which Alex will speak to in a sec. No hero in your tragedy, no daring in your escape, no salutes for your surrender, nothing noble in your fate. Christ would have you done. So, Alex, would you like to?
So the building of intensity from the solo itself, going back into a vocal section, at this point it's a shorter verse following a guitar solo, which a lot of times when it comes to people putting together the form of their song, they might go from a solo, maybe they'll go back into a verse. Crazy Train did that. Hey, why not? But maybe they'll go into a double length chorus out. In this case, a short verse just to basically say, with that building of intensity of, well, here's what we're going to say after you're gone, because this is such, like could be said, the permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I mean, these are some pretty damning lines, pretty intense lines to say, hey man, what's up? No hero. The idea of no hero, no daring, no salutes. You're not going to be lauded after this. Which, in all honesty, I feel like that's a little. For me personally, I think that's a little excessive but that's everyone's opinion. But that's also a standard opinion. People love to throw words like coward around, which in many cases where they don't exist. But because at that point, if someone is dealing with something, they're dealing with something, and they're not necessarily thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be a hero by jumping off of a building." They're thinking, "I can't deal with this." But at the same time, too, there is this tough love section, for lack of a better term, to basically say, "Hey, we're not going to think fondly of you taking this way out." or most people aren't going to think fondly. One of the things that always stuck out for me too, and any of the younger members of the audience or panels might not be as aware that, I mean, from certainly for any of us that were, listening to this stuff circa 1989 or 1980 something, you didn't hear someone use a word like Christ in an exclamation on TV or in pop culture. Language, I mean, the language coming out of the 80s was on, as far as radio, as far as network TV, was pretty censored. It was pretty tame. You didn't really hear certain subjects. So this always stood out for me with the idea of that just being a snap of Christ, what have you done? It's sort of, wow, that's, exclamatory and rather, as I say, rather standoutish at that point, because the building from the solo into, basically Neil or Geddy, sort of just giving a little attitude to this person to say, no, bad. Anyway.
And I think it was like a desperate plea is how I heard it. The same emotional resonance you were describing, and I thought of it the second you said it. This is a shorter verse. It's cut short too soon to me.
Yeah.
So to me, it's extremely symbolic of these just desperate plea saying, don't do this. And then exactly as you set up, Christ, what have you done? It cuts. That it's jarring. And I think it was fully intended to be such. That's, again, the way it's crafted. It draws you into this intensity, and then boom, the exclamation.
Yeah, and it really kind of encapsulates the story, of, okay, now we're left with what we're left with, and that reminder at the end, we get lost in the darkness, but people, if you're in a dark place, if you can still steer your way around, and people who have, I guess, they're not, I should say goals, but people have aspirations, no matter what. Excuse me, not getting choked up, this is my voice. Excuse me. People who get lost in their darkness, they, even people who are navigators on a vessel like a ship, back in the old days, you would have ways to navigate to find your way. So even though it's the darkest time, you have a way to navigate that, which is, it's like, I was trying to remember that quote. I think Donna had said it a while back, where, or maybe Ryan, that Neil always offers a solution in any tune. Like a song like this is like very heavy subject matter, but there's a solution offered. So I was trying to find my way, no pun intended, with what the message of this is, that no matter what, you can find ways to turn around. You can steer yourself out of these dark places. And his whole thing was like, what's the most awesome thing I can do today? So just the reminder to people who are contemplating this, you have options. And even now you have like a community like this, we're here talking about Rush. There's communities of people you can get together with, and you can talk, and you can get these things out of your headspace and move on to what's the most awesome thing I could do today. You have a community, which is, I think that's one of the great things about the roundtables, is that reminder that, here's somebody we look up to for what he's done musically, his lyrics, and it gives us these reminders constantly of these things, that you can find solutions to your problems, but it's as much as possible, but it's not always possible, and we have to deal with those things, whatever life gives us, we have to deal with them, and not turn our back on these things either. So I think it's the courage to face your obstacles and know that you can surmount. And I think that's one of the most powerful parts of this tune that I get out of it. I don't know if anybody else feels the same. Does anybody want to speak to those bits of it as we get ready to close?
I mean, I definitely agree with you there. Like I said earlier, this is a very dark song, but at the same time, it's very reassuring to me. There's a lot of nice reminders in this song, like everyone gets lost in the darkness. We all struggle with everything, and that's not to discredit anyone's problems, but everyone has issues and everyone goes through it. The key is learning how to deal with it, and the ones that do learn, they end up better in the long run. Yep.
It's funny because Edgar mentioned Child in Time in the beginning, and that's in a minor key. And this song doesn't sound like it's in a minor key, even though it's a very heavy subject. It doesn't feel very heavy, except for the plotting in the beginning with the bass chords, like Child in Time has those opening chords. but it sounds different in Child in Time. But this song has, it doesn't sound heavy, even though it's a very heavy subject. It's kind of like, again, that craftsmanship. It just sounds, I don't know what the word is for it, what the adjective is to describe the musical mood.
Maybe like
Melancholic?
Okay, did we mention? I think someone mentioned that in the beginning, right? Or no? I forget. But yeah, it's definitely melancholic, but it doesn't feel like or sound like a minor key, you know. So which you always
Well,
associate with sadness and melancholy, but
well, there are also a lot of rock in general where you would think minor would make sense for it to be kind of dark and foreboding. But I mean, most AC/DC songs were basically 1-4-5 progressions, and I mean, Hell's Bells is really the only legitimately notably minor riff. Well, I shouldn't say the only, but it's, you know, as far as notable, I should say. I mean, so I mean, same with them. The idea of the B flat as the first chord, it's the 5 chord of the E, but the E is a sus2. And that's something that Lifeson always did for the sake of ambiguity, essentially. So it's like, well, it's not minor, it's not major. That chord was major, but it's the 5 chords. So the 1 chord is sus. So as I say, not major or minor.
Yeah,
either way, yeah, completely ambiguous.
I think actually what adds up to the like as you say, it's like melancholy, but it's like, you know, like mellow melancholy, like bright, you know, I don't know what's the word. The mixing on the Presto album, it's not, you know, the bass is very prominent in the mix, but as an instrument, it does not have low frequencies, which is weird.
Right.
Where like Russian Rio, well, no, it has tons of low frequencies, like, and not just boom, 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 but the bass is also like insanely crunchy. So the whole Presto is like very airy, you know, and I can't imagine this track with a loud bass with lots of low frequencies. Like imagine the chorus, "All of us get lost in the darkness," and Lifeson is playing this dun 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 arpeggio, right, on the clean guitar, semi-clean guitar, and imagine the bass going boom boom, like, you know, with low. No. So
Give it the injustice for all treatment.
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
All bass frequencies, no bass. Oh, one more. Don't turn your back and slam the door on me. In a cappella line at the very end, left hanging there.
The echo.
We can't turn our back on that line, especially as one of Neil's repeated lines. And that's certainly something that is rather distinctive when it comes to anyone who does suffer with addictions and whatnot. A lot of it for these individuals is the feeling of isolation. And as humans, like Rob, you were just saying, as far as the community, that's really a benefit, you know. And certainly, you know, 1989, 1990, we didn't have the internet, at least, you know, it existed in, you know, in certain situations, but not, I mean, I certainly didn't have a computer at home. So, but yeah, we have this community. There is less of a possibility for isolation unless you really kind of turn your back yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Very well said.
Yep. It's very easy to pass the buck, so to speak, you know, on, well, you know, they'll figure it out, or, you know, they'll find a way through. But just the ways we have to communicate are so vast now, you know. It's it can do one of two things. So it's like, you know, how to, again, perspective and perception come back into play in terms of that, you know. So it's interesting, and a whole other subject, you know, with communications, you know, maybe on a different roundtable, perhaps we'll go into it.
A woman, maybe we can get a woman who has a doctorate in communications on it.
Yeah.
Find someone.
I think there's somebody in the fold that, yeah.
Somebody in the community.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we got a pretty good bunch. So I guess on that note, we can talk about what the time we have left before we completely wrap up is our favorite live version of this tune. So anybody can jump in first.
Yeah. As I said, Russian Rio was like, well, the song is based on bass. It starts with bass, and well, they just, Russian Rio in general has lots of bass, as I said, but it also has lots of reverb and vocals, and also this stadium feel. Like, I don't know if it's like natural reverb or, well, it's something. So, what do you say, Christ, what have you done? And the last line, I don't know what it is, the very last line.
Don't turn your
Don't
back
turn
and
your
slam
back
the door
and
on me.
Yeah, there is so much reverb going on. So
Mm.
it's like you feel the stadium, how it feels this. Well, that's what I like in the like R40 and all those recent, well, live releases. It, they are mixed, all right. Some of them better, some of them worse. But Russian Rio has this like energy, and with this track, like the reverb, the bass, everything is turned to 11. Like, so to me, it's this.
And I said Presto was my first new album, and it was my first live show of theirs. That experience of seeing it live in that tour, and I'm secure enough for myself to say I was in tears when they played it. That being said, even though I wasn't there, I agree completely that Rio was at least my favorite version. It's opinion or a preference, but because of every reason he said, I like watching that concert more than my memory even says as far as the emotion I felt seeing it live for the first time. I think it was perfectly done at that show and were perfectly captured at that show. And with Matt Maheron's video behind them on the screens, and I won't go long into that, but Matt Maheron is known for being able to do loneliness, isolation, victimization, all these emotions with simple silhouettes. So with those images behind them, with everything ever said, yes, real.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. It's important. How about you, Evan, Alex?
Well, as much as I love the Russian Rio version and Russian Rio as a whole, I mean, it's a great live album. I think I prefer the version from the Presto tour, the one with the. I think there's a version of it on YouTube you can
Yeah,
find.
Auburn Hills, the Palace, I think.
Yeah. I don't know what, honestly, I don't know what it is about it. I think it's just because it was the Presto tour and it was the first time that the past was being showcased to the world. I don't know. It's special to me, I guess. I really like that version. Check it out if you haven't seen it.
Yes. How about you, Alex?
I'd have to go with the Presto tour also. Because I certainly did see that tour. I feel like that might have been the first place I saw the video also because I mean, show don't tell, as I said when we did that show, that song, that I did manage to tape that a couple times over, like in September of '89. But I mean, I saw them on April 28th of 1990 here, like 5 miles that way, and I'd say, much like Evan's saying, or alluding to, the thing I appreciate about the song on the tour for the album, especially at that time, is that I especially now have greater appreciation for the overdriven tones that Lifeson had then, as opposed to the let's crank up the saturation on the distortion. So it's kind of like, what if we back off on that distortion and having a more open sound? I mean, there were times in my life where it's like, yeah, let's kick that up. You got the Marshall, turn it up. But I'd say, yeah, I like that openness, that expansiveness of the sounds he was getting. He was still using the Heinl signature guitars when they rolled into town here, which, not necessarily the most mind-blowing sound from those guitars, very sterile. But at the same time too, it sounded like them at the time. I just appreciate it.
Very honest sound.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely share that sentiment for a favorite. And I love what Elgar mentioned as well with the Rio. It's very hard for me to pick one, so I'm just gonna put it as a tie. For different reasons. Light show in the Presto tour was incredible with the lights going straight up. I mean, like that wall, it's like there's some kind of symbolism in there. And then the sonic power of Rio, I think, is just and I didn't see any one of those concerts in person. So yeah, I'm gonna call it a tie for those two versions. So
you didn't see Presto?
I'm wearing the shirt, but I didn't go. It's like, yep, I'm kicking myself on that one. So what are you gonna do? Can't see them all,
Yeah.
But at any rate, excellent discussion tonight with this tune. I really appreciate it. And if you want to be on one of the roundtables, feel free to reach out and we'll get you on. If you like the video, please feel free to like and subscribe, make comments on the video underneath. We do read them, so definitely check them out. and we'll check them out. So feel free to contribute your favorite live version, what you have to say about this tune, and we'll let you guys go. And have yourselves a great one. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all the panelists. Igor, thank you very much for your first time being here and your live performance. I really appreciate that too. So, all right, guys, have a great night. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.